Welcome to the Peak Provider NDIS podcast. My name is Chris Hall, your host, and today I'm really honoured to have Cheryl Barrett from the Southern Cross Support Services on with me. Now, Southern Cross Support Services is one of the top 25 in Australia, but what's really intriguing about the organisation is the rapid pace of growth. So it's always a pleasure to talk to CEOs that are at Cheryl's level, but today we're going to be, talking about philosophy and strategy and all that stuff that we always like to have a good yarn about, but especially the growth pattern, right? So, Cheryl, it really is a pleasure. Welcome to the podcast, and I'm excited to have a chat with you today.
Yeah, and hi, Chris. How are you? And thank you for your interest. It's always nice to know that people are interested in what we do.
Oh, absolutely. Look, I'm a business geek. I love having a chat about this kind of stuff. So whether it be IT or business, it does it for me. So,
great.
Yeah. Well, listen, let's kind of set the scene a bit, right? So, Southern Cross Support Services, it was set up in Queensland back in 2011, and it was Greg and Karen Gaston that set it up. And they created a very strong base, right? So it's got the Queenslander roots to it. Now, in terms of your role as the CEO, I know it's a group of companies that you manage. It's not just this organization, but in the context of Southern Cross in particular, you came in 6.5 years ago. And since that period, it's substantially grown all the way from approximately under 200 staff, but now nearly 1,500. So that's amazing in itself. But in addition to that, you've gone across 3 regional centers, to become a national organization. So that's incredible. What's achieved in that 6.5 years. Can you help unpack the visioning process, the business case building, and also the strategy that you basically brought to the table to make that happen?
Yeah, look, it's been a long journey. It's only 6.5 years, but we know what it's like. Some days it feels like forever to get to where we have. And but look, it's been a great journey. It's been a fun journey. Like I say, started 6.5 years ago, and it was interesting because I was interviewed by Greg Gaston, which was then the CEO. And started the business with his wife, Karen. But it was a 5-hour interview that was really just going to be a quick chat. And to stay 5 years, obviously I was intrigued. And I think that straight away was something that I walked away with. But it was the fact that their genuine care for their clients really, I suppose, it touched me, the way that everything came back to what's in it for the client. And not only that, they were very progressive in their thoughts, very innovative. So, I looked at the organisation thinking they've got a wonderful culture that genuinely cares about their clients. What a great way to start. So a bit of a bonus that, that was there, that didn't have to be changed. They had a genuine care for their clients. So, I think the thing was too, they were all involved. So, Greg, as the CEO, would still go out on camping trips with his clients. They made sure that their clients had their annual holiday and something every 3 months, which was different. So I felt that there was real insight into wanting to have great outcomes. So that was the starting block, I think, for me, that really got me enthralled in the business to start with. From there, really, it was about what can we do to build this business, to share this love, I guess, and look after more people. For me, it really was starting with our core values, making sure that they never change. Mm-hmm. So really, we were in the Wide Bay region, so Bundaberg is our head office, and we'll always stay, that's our roots, we'll always stay there. But we also worked across Fraser Coast and Rockhampton. Mm-hmm. And after a while, I could see that we could replicate this across Queensland and nationally. But what do we need to do that? We needed great people, and that was important. And it's important in any business, and it's very important when you're growing and you're growing quickly. So basically, as a team, it takes more than one person, and certainly we already had great staff, so that was a bonus. Granted, a small team, but also, it's more than just one person that grows a business and has a vision to grow it to where we have today. So with the directors, we set out on this vision of growing the business. But the main thing was keeping our core values, making sure that we had best practice in everything we did,
Okay.
Making sure that our people came first alongside our clients, making sure that we filled our gaps, our skill gaps. And that was really important to me. It's about not just having the right people, but the right people in the right roles.
Yes.
You know, that changes everything. And that wasn't an easy journey. Let me tell you, we you know, hired and moved people around until they were in the right place. So that was probably our number one strategy: get the right people and get them in the right roles. From then it was about making sure that everything we did, like I say, we stuck to making sure that we had our practice right, that we had, you know, person-centered active supports all the time, and making sure that we kept growing as an organisation, become more professional, more efficient, making sure that we were ahead of the game and not behind. You know, I always believe that we need to be looking, where's this world going to be in 5 years' time? What's the NDIS going to look like? You know, they've only just matured now, really. What's the world going to look like in 5 years' time? And then we want to be working towards it now, because we all know how quickly, look at AI, wow, it's changed the world that quickly. So we need to be in front of the game. So I guess that was the real vision, is making sure that we were doing that all the time. We were bettering our practice, bettering ourselves as a business, as people. You know, training and personal and professional development is really important to me. So we went about training our staff, making sure that we've got the best staff, but they've got the best resources. And I think we're a little way off that yet. You know, our resources, you know, we still need some really good IT systems, but really it was making sure that our staff could do, or our people could do what they needed to do, so they were well trained. I think really, Chris, that's the core of what we did. You know, we've got great people, we've got them in the right roles, we've got the right roles for our organisation to sustain growth, and we've got really well-intended staff, well-trained staff, and staff that have the capability to pivot and change when we need to as an organisation for our clients' needs, and for, I guess, the system and the climate we work in and the sector we work in.
Yeah, exactly. And because it sounds like your leadership style, which I really admire, is leading people with you. It's not the top down, almost military-like structure of barking orders, so to speak. It's kind of like, you know, we know that if you express your natural skills, for example, and you're in the right role, then it's naturally going to happen. And I think that one way of visualizing this is that I can almost see you at the front of it, and people are walking with you, so to speak. It's not, you know, that is through that people power from the employee side of things. That sounds like that just very kind of organically expanded from there, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely, Chris. You know, our people are our DNA. Make no mistake about that. They drive innovation, creativity. They allow our business to adapt all the time. It's our people that do that. They adapt to market conditions. They adapt to our clients all the time, to whatever we throw in front of them. So yeah, our people are our DNA. And we have a saying at Southern Cross throughout of all of our businesses, that no one's any more important than anyone else.
Right.
I am no important than anyone else. I just have a different level of responsibility. So we all have different levels of responsibility, but no one's special. And we make sure that that's how it is. You know, I meet with our staff. I go out into the houses and meet with our clients. I have lunch with our staff and our clients. And, you know, if a house needs setting up, let's say, and I'm there, I'm going to do it. You know, no one's any special than anyone else. We just have different levels of responsibility. And, you know, that served us really well, because our people and our people at the front line in particular, they do the hard yards. And it's our corporate staff, or what we call our backup house, our HR, our finance, our rosters. They're the people that are supporting our frontline people to do great work all the time. So I think that, you know, that has served us well. Served us very well.
Very much so. So I mean, yeah, people focused, but across the two dimensions of not, you know, solely participants or solely employees. It's both. And out of interest, with the Bundaberg routes, and you mentioned Rockhampton, for example, did you, or do you, forgive me for not knowing this, have you gone into the Brisbane market or not?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We work from in our, let's say, our stills and our core supports.
Yes.
We work from northern New South Wales to Cairns and
Yeah.
beyond, actually,
Yeah.
further into the Northern Territory, or the far north that we call it.
Okay.
Absolutely. Look, we do. I think our specialty really is we do regional and rural very well.
Yes.
We really do. It's our niche, I guess you can say. But that
Mm.
doesn't mean we can't work in the cosmopolitan or the cities, and we do. We work well in those regions. I just think that they're our core roots,
Yeah.
our regional and our rural. We know them well. And we continue to expand into those areas as well, because
Mhm.
I guess I had a background of 25 years in the West. So we're
Mhm.
talking about the Charlevilles, Badoories, really out west for Queensland.
Mhm.
And um, those people need the same supports as the city people, the city
Yeah.
dwellers. It's absolutely no different. So we really enjoy working in the regional and
Mm.
the rural areas, but we also work certainly in Brisbane and have a good
Mm.
clientele and have a really big still base there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's quite inspiring to hear that regional and rural success story because because I do business coaching and do sales and marketing projects for people, like, what I often do is look at the analysis of the data tools that the NDIS provide. And here's an interesting fact that the listeners might find interesting. You've got your 590 odd thousand, this is the last quarter, participants nationally, and it's growing all the time. But when you look at the Greater Sydney, so like the hour radius of the Greater Sydney, if you include the Blue Mountains, and then Melbourne and Brisbane, roughly speaking, the hour radius around just those three cities, that covers 51% of all the participants nationally, which is mind-blowing,
That's
right?
crazy,
It is crazy. So
isn't
you can
it?
see why there's so much competition in Sydney and Western Sydney, same for
Yeah.
Melbourne, same for Brisbane. So there's kind of like there's a scrambling. But also, my point is that if you juxtapose that to regional and rural, you got to really have, I think, all the things down pat that you clearly have done well, whether it be people training,
Mm.
process, because there's it's a different demand picture. That's my point. It sounds like you're
Yeah.
doing both, right? Regional, rural, plus some of the cities. But gosh, you got to do it well to get that right, because if you were starting out maybe tiny and fresh and whatever, and you're just in, should we say, one town or whatever, and then you might find it a struggle, right? That's kind of one thing that I noticed with the ones
Yeah.
just starting out. um
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, they talk about the thin markets all the time. And
yes.
I think with the NDIS, it can be very hard for them to put the funding into those regions when the supports aren't there. But if the funding's not there, the supports aren't going to come there.
Right.
And it is very hard because people, a lot of our frontline staff never come into an office, as
Yep.
they're working in people's homes all the time. And I guess the further out you get, the more isolated you become.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's really hard then, to keep the culture the same and the practice the same. So you do have to have that little bit of density. It's completely different working in your rural areas, that's for sure.
Mm.
Because to keep that culture and keep that practice embedded and to a high standard is a constant.
Yes.
And you can't take your eye off the ball, that's for sure.
Yeah. No, I had an educational background before going into the NDIS, and so I used to sell projects to registered training organizations and universities, and do e-learning projects, right? And so I know the crucial place of, for example, the technical term is self-paced e-learning, right? So what that means is that you're not reliant on people coming physically into the office at the same time and watching a physical instructor in front of them. You can literally log on, go to a learning management system. You could be sitting having a sauna at the gym and doing an e-learning module on complex behavior. You can do all sorts. And I tell that story because I know a support worker friend of mine that literally says that. She goes, "Oh, every time I go to the gym, I do the latest module." It's great.
Wow.
So things like that are great strategies, aren't they? It's one of many strings that you need to have to your bow. But I think that kind of modernizing provision businesses on the e-learning front is one of the many things that people can do, right? To tackle the regional thing, tackle the we're all on different shifts and we haven't got time to come to the office at the same time problem.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you know, we know that it's probably been one of the best inventions in the world, this whole teams and the way that we can all work in isolation now. And it certainly has supported the regional areas as well, but the rural areas in particular and the remote areas, so that we can get that training out to our staff. We can do inductions now in teams, you know,
Yes.
and we do our what we call practice essentials and our inductions over teams. Whereas once, not only was it expensive, but a lot of people didn't have the ability to travel. So we couldn't get them all in the room together. Whereas now we can, and yet they can live hundreds of kilometres apart, which is fantastic. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's
and again,
changed the way we do things.
And on the education side, that makes a distinction. It takes me back to the RTO project days. They'd always make a distinction between the learning material and the assessment method. So that's just a educational way of saying, basically, whether it be self-paced e-learning, a Microsoft Teams meeting, that's the learning environment, right? So you can pretty much achieve 90% of any educational content digitally, right? That's my belief, at least. But it's the assessment side that, of course, you might need to come in. So let's say you want to do a subcutaneous injection for diabetes or whatever. That's when you need to come in or get the RN to go out and check that they're good. But even just having that attitude educationally to training, I think it can empower organizations, can't it, to delineate between learning and assessment.
Absolutely. Oh, look, you know, training in any form is fantastic, in my opinion. And like I say, not just your professional, but your personal development as well. But that's what professional development brings to you. And I think that being able to have you know, all forms of training is really important. Obviously, we love to get with our staff as well. You know, your staff meeting and do that face-to-face training is very important. People like to be connected. You know, we're humans and we like people. People like people. Most people like people. But, you know, it really is a way for us when we're working in regional and rural areas to be able to get our staff trained. So, yeah, it's great.
So you've gone, the scaling journey has been about, both dimensions of people, culture, and also great best practice. So, you know, as we said, just out of interest, you know, out of that 6.5 years of expansion to a much broader geography, I'm sure there's been temptations along the way of like, oh, we could do this here or we could do that there. What's been the core business offering that you've always had to kind of anchor back to during those expansion years?
Yeah, look, isn't it easy to do that? And, you know, and I'm one of those people that do see that, oh, well, there's something fresh, you know, I want to have a look, I want to have a go. But, you know, you can't do everything. You probably can, but can you do it all great? You know, I would challenge that. I think that you have to be to a different size to be able to do everything really, really well. And we want to do our core stuff, which is always going to be disability support, always, and it's always going to be SIL. That is absolutely our core. That's our core service. I guess what our core offering or business offering is also our people. You know, our people is core to everything we do. Our people are everything to us, and without great people, you're not going to have great service, you're not going to have great practice, and you're certainly not going to have great happy clients. And that's what we all want. That's what we're doing it for. And there's absolutely no mistake within our organisation why we're doing it. So we will always come back to our roots of doing great disability services, making sure that our participants have great homes and can live the life as well as they can to their ability, just like you and I can. And they can have those offerings. So I think we'll never walk away from those core values or core offerings, but we always know that we need our people to do that. And I guess I'll always come back to that.
Absolutely. So, okay, so SIL's the focus. And I'm doing a project right now for a wonderful provider on the Sunshine Coast. And one of the things that they do is they'll put solar panels, for example, on the roofs of the properties that they own. And it's to have a point of difference, and it's to then say, look, we can actually help with the utility bills and, you know, address the rising energy costs. And so, you know, they do things like that just out of interest in the context of saying, you know, we ensure that we have great homes. Are there any particular recipes and flares that you implement to to say like this is kind of what our standard of a great still home looks like?
Yes, well, solar, we have solar on just about all of our properties. I don't think there's, and we have, we have maybe 60 or more properties. Even our head office is completely, the roof is full of solar panels. So luckily we've got directors that love that idea, and it certainly does help our clients. But they're the things we look for to help our clients to make it easier for them. We do rent subsidies. I guess that's probably one of the things we're very well known for. We do subsidise our rent for our clients because we want great properties. We want a high standard of properties. What does that mean? It means not having a property too old so that we can make sure that everything is working well, that environmentally it's sound, and like we say, we're looking after the power consumption for them as well. We purpose build a lot. We do a lot of units, which works really well for us. People that can have their sleepover in the most needed unit. Let's say we've got 1 to 3, and we may have a set of 3 units, and the sleepovers in one unit that is needed more, whereas the others have more time to themselves. So they feel like they're living in their own home.
I like that.
And that
So they get their own
really
apartment,
well,
literally their own apartment.
Absolutely.
That's really innovative, because sorry to interrupt this, you got me inspired there. The classic model is to get the 4-bedroom and have the fourth bedroom as the sleepover, but you kind of and yeah, wow. Because I know that, for example, in a lot of SDA properties, there's a formality to the term, I can't remember it, but there's like you have to, I believe, by legislation, have a room that it should it be needed, you can have a staff room to sleep over in SDA properties in particular. But you're almost kind of taking that philosophy and model and applying it to SIL, but in the apartment unit. That's really cool.
Well, you look at it so in a set of units of let's just say 3 set of units, and we have that with our SDA at the moment, the ones that were built in Bundaberg, use for example. A lot of people, they don't need the 24-hour full on full face-to-face, let's say, but they need someone to be there. So in our SILs, we have that ability for someone to pick the phone up or the intercom up to say, to the person sleeping next door where they're needed, if they need them through the night. But we know that people like to feel like they're independent, and that's the whole idea of the scheme. So they feel they still have a spare bedroom for a sleepover if they want, but also for a sleepover for the family if they want, which is lovely for them. And then they don't have to think that they've got a worker in at night with them, if that makes sense. So it really makes it very nice for the individuals to be able to have their private space. It also works with matching, because we know that that's very hard with if you've got a 1 to 3 and you have to live with other people, but you don't always want to live with other people, but you've got exactly the same funding in exactly the same setup. So it works very well for us. So that's something that we hold, we think is a real asset for us and for our clients in particular. Also, looking at our new SDAs is making sure that everyone has their own court. So if it is a house, that they've got their own private court area outside, so they can go outside to their patio. It's fenced all for themselves as well as having a common area and an area that they can have barbecues together, but just making sure that everyone has their own toilets as well. So that's another thing. We make sure that there's en suites in our properties. So also a lot of our houses that we have, our SIL houses now, that every single person has their own en suite, which just gives them that privacy as well, and that little bit more independence, and that works really well for us as well. So I'd say that's some of the points of difference that we have.
That's huge. That's good. That's really inspirational. So just break down the unit example again for me. So if you've got the 1 to 3, you've got 3 participants. Did you say that each of the participants' units would have 2 bedrooms typically? Was that right?
Yes, they all have 2 bedrooms.
Okay. And then for the staff, if they're doing, say, let's say they're on a sleepover shift, is that a 4th unit by itself?
No, that's
it's active. Are they roaming?
Yes.
Sorry.
Depending on the amount of independence time, obviously the clients can have.
Yes.
It doesn't work for every client, but it certainly works for a lot of our clients.
Okay. Yeah, got it. Okay, so you don't need to give the unit for the staff member, but they're basically roaming. Accordingly.
Yes. They're still in the property. That's right.
Interesting.
So that works very well for us, yes. And also the like I say, having their own en suites is is huge.
That
and
is
some of them
huge.
have kitchenettes as well. So, you can get up, you can make that cup of coffee if you want.
No, I love
And,
that.
building independence is important, and it's what so many people have been looking for.
So with the example again of say the SIL properties and the SDA ones, you said we purpose build some of them. What different providers have different attitudes. Some go, no, we only rent and we separate that out. Others will do a blend, and some might go, we only buy properties and then offer them as a service. What's your approach to, should we say, ownership versus rental and the blend of that?
Look, we have some people that own their own properties,
Of
but do you
course.
mean within the one complex?
Yep. Oh, what I mean is,
So,
as a business, if you wanted to, open up another facility property or whatever, would you rent it from a landlord and then sublet, or do you like to buy that property and then use that for your services?
okay, ourselves. My apologies, Chris. Yeah, look, it depends. We buy a lot of properties, and normally when we buy a property, it's because we can't find a property in the area that someone would like to live, and something that's close to facilities, something that will do more than one client. So obviously we know when it's three, once again, looking for the right property. So yes, we will then purchase if we can't find what we're looking for. And in today's market, it is very hard. So to be able to have our own properties works really well. Do we want to buy all the time? Of course we don't. But it certainly is where our funding goes, is into buying our properties, so that we can ensure that we've got high quality in the right areas that suits our clients. So if we can't find something that suits our clients, then we'll go out looking to purchase.
I just think there's a decency to the approach that you're doing. I really love that. Everyone's rights are exactly the same. So of course you'd want to have your privacy. Of course you'd ideally like to have your own bathroom out and a nicer property that's more modern. So that really speaks to my heart. I can, good on you.
And can I just probably should clarify too, Chris, if you don't mind me butting in there, is that these properties aren't managed by ourselves. So they are a alone business that we've built, Blue Summer Properties, that is a partner for us. So what happens is we will ask them to buy, and that way we just make sure that there's no conflict of interest. It would be unfair to say, well, it's our properties, we can move people on if we want or we don't want. So we make sure we've got that arm's distance, just to make sure that there's real clarity, and to make sure that there's no conflict of interest there. So it is another business that we partner with, that we've developed, obviously at the side. That serves us well to to make sure there's no conflict of interest. That's right.
Yeah, exactly. That's interesting. The whole separating out organizations thing is, when I had Myron Mann from the Bedford Group on, fascinating model of basically giving birth to lots of different supply chain companies, and it kind of makes sense because if these separate entities that you essentially partner with, if they can sustain and have their own economic health, then it just makes sense for everyone concerned. So I think it's a really intriguing model.
Absolutely. It's worked well for us, but it's worked well for our clients as well, and that's what it's all about, isn't it? It's making sure that they've got options, but also being able to support us to then go on and support more people.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Now tell us a bit about, with the Queenslander routes, and stretching across to New South Wales and all that stuff. How have those Queenslander routes influenced the growth of the business?
Look, I think, because I'll go back to what I said, we do regional and rural very well. And we all know Queensland's a big area, a vast area, and we have lots of regional and rural areas. I think that it allows us to be, I don't know, we're a very professional organisation, but we all know that Queenslanders are a little bit laid back. So we enjoy that. I think it allows us to connect with our people, connect with our clients very well. And I think it's given us a real understanding that you can do what we sometimes think is the impossible. So to have great service in remote and rural areas, it gives you that drive to be able to do that anywhere. And let's face it, the rest of Australia is also a big area, has lots of regional and rural areas as well. So really it's just mirroring it in another region. or another state. And so I think that's what serves us really well. There's no doubt that we've got, I guess, strong roots of Queensland that gives us the ability as well to work broadly, like I was saying, across, I guess, all sorts of regions, as well as into those remote areas, into those First Nations people's communities where we can also work. And it's served us well, I guess, having that vast changes of areas that we can work through.
Yeah, for sure.
Didn't say that very well, did I?
No, you said it beautifully. No, not at all. No. Yeah, you're the one that's achieved what you've achieved. I'm very impressed. Now, with hindsight over the last 6.5 years, if you look back, and again with hindsight, what would you say some of the mistakes that you made, and you go, "Gosh, I wouldn't do that again," as part of the growth,
Yeah, look, never take your eyes off anything. I think that's it. I think it's making sure, again, that you've got the right people. You might have the right people. You have to have them in the right roles. Also, that when you go into a new region, you can do all the right things. That's your research. Let's research the regions. Let's make sure we've got a great business plan. We've got the right people, our employment strategies right. You can have all that. But at the end of the day, if you don't have the right people in the right place, I think that's where you can become unstuck. And what I mean by that is it takes a long time for a community to accept you. It takes a long time to, really embed your roots into an area. And I think to make sure, I'm very strong on having the same culture on the Gold Coast as we've got in North Queensland, in Cairns, making sure that we've got our same practices on the Gold Coast that we've got in Emerald. So to be able to do that, it takes a long time. And I think that you can do it and think you've got it right and step away too quickly. And, there's no doubt that we've learned our lesson there, taking our finger off the pulse just a little bit too quickly. So what we've learned is that not just everything we do is considered, Chris, and don't just make sure that you do that. Make sure that you give it time.
Yes.
And time to make sure that you've embedded yourself in that community, because that's what it's all about. Making sure that your practices are really sound within those in our people, so that your culture stays strong.
Yeah.
And if you can do that, then you'll be right. I think it's a win-win situation if you get all that right. But it comes down to your people. Yes. It comes down to not just, like I say, not just your researchers, not just making sure you've got your funding right, making sure you've got the right people, and that you don't take your eye off the ball. And you can't afford to do that in today's climate anyway. But I think they're the things that will serve you well.
Yes. Yeah, wholeheartedly agree. When I'm coaching people about expansion, I often, focus on, a couple of distinctions. You need support worker hubs where you can have pockets of people and they can go maybe within a half an hour radius to the shift, but they're not going to go further than that. So you've got to actually embrace where your capacity actually is. You can't just go, we do all of New South Wales. Like, it's often rubbish, for a lot of providers, right? But even in that Sydney example, like, I often say to people, look, if you have staff in central Sydney, if you have staff in the western of Sydney, and then if you go down to, say, Campbelltown near Liverpool, actually, geographically, you've probably got most of the hour radius of Greater Sydney covered just by having 3 hubs of support workers. So that's just one example about like the hub angle, right? And the other thing that I think speaks to what you're saying as well is, have patience and persistence to get the regions that you're already in right, because like the Sydney region, for example, that with that hour example there's 80,000 participants, right? So just don't think that you even have to go to Melbourne yet, or Brisbane yet, or wherever yet. If you're not serving a good portion of that, do better, and nail it basically. And once you get that traction where you go, you know what, we've got this down pat, maybe that's then when you've got the capital, and the patience is not just an emotion, is it? It's also the balance sheet to be able to back up that patience, because it might take time to turn a new office into revenue, for example.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, you can't make the mistake of being for profit or not for profit. Everything you do today as a business.
Mm-hmm.
You have to think of it like that.
Absolutely.
And we say that if we're not making a profit, we can't buy any more homes. We can't build any more SDA. If we're not making a profit, we can't train our staff. So you do have to have patience. You have to look at it that way. So there has to be a good business case, a good business model to move forward. And I guess I always use the word considered. You do have to consider that. And I think you have to understand that all communities are different. They have different needs. And the people are actually different.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we say that Queenslanders are different from Victorians. We don't just speak differently, we're different. And I think that's a mistake you can make as well. Don't think you can just take that service from somewhere and plonk it in, you know, let's say a regional one and plonk it there on the Gold Coast and think that your workers are going to be exactly the same, because they're not.
Yeah.
You know, they won't travel that extra hour like you're saying. If you live in Cairns and you travel an extra hour, or Emerald, that's what you do. You know, you don't even think twice about it.
Yeah, okay.
But if you're living in the city of Sydney and you say, oh, well, you know, your service is going to be an hour down the road, they're like, get out. So people are different as well.
No, that's a really good point. You're right. The sense of what's a commute. That's a perfect example, right? Because the Australian Bureau of Statistics, the average commute is 17 kilometers, right? So that's in kilometers, but 17 k's on a good Queenslander highway, you know, you probably do that pretty bloody quick. But if you're in eastern suburbs trying to just get from Bondi to the city, you could be buggered. That could take you an hour.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, people do think differently. And I think that's why I always come back to the right people in the right roles, because not just communities are different. And you do want to embed yourself in a community, because that's really important, because that's where you get the great stakeholder and, you know, engagement. And that's where you find your great services for your clients. So you do need to be embedded into the community as well. And it takes time, and you have to be consistent in everything you do, but you have to bring that culture of your core culture of your organisation to make sure you're embedded in the new region as well. And that can be a trick. There's no doubt about that. Yeah.
You know, the whole right people in the right role thing. Like one of the things I've done for more than 10 years now is strength coaching, and it's like a Gallup methodology. It's psychometric, and you know, one of the leadership books that I read once I think they used the terminology, first of all, know the seats on the bus and then put the right people in the right seats. So it speaks to, you know, the right roles thing. But
absolutely,
you know, always know the right seats first, because if you don't put the business's needs and objectives and vision first, then you just, you know, you're not really aiming at anything.
True.
But, you know, psychometrics, whether it be strengths or other things, that can be a powerful way to supplement someone's CV. Out of interest, you know, have you ever done anything like kind of it goes beyond just the CV, so to speak, to figure out right people in right roles?
Look, no, we don't do any testing. I have to say, HR, I don't know if I'm their favourite person. It's true. It's true. They say, Cheryl, you draw all over your notes instead of taking notes for us. You know, I believe an interview should be a conversation. Let's get to know the person. Anyone can answer the questions. Let's face it, Google them, put them in GPT chat. You know, you're going to get all the right answers. So anyone can sit there and do that. I bet you could do it, Chris, no problem at all. But, you know, can you have a great, and you can, so that's silly, but can the person have a great conversation? Let's see how they think. Are they innovative in the way they think? Can they just talk about lots of things? To me, that's how you pick the right person for those real pivotal roles that you can't do without, those roles that really are going to make or break you. So, yeah, I believe in a great conversation. I truly do. I think that it's the best way to learn about a person. And it breaks down their barriers, you know, it breaks down that wall of trying to be who they think you want them to be in an interview.
Yes.
You know, I think, yes, you still have to be professional, you have to be all those sorts of things. But for my team, if they can't crack a smile, if they're not a happy person as well, it's not going to work, you know. So you have to have that mix as well. And you really see that when you have a conversation. You have the right conversation, obviously, but, you know, I want to know about the family. I want to know how they treat people, you know, and you get that in a great conversation rather than what was the safety thing that you did in your last you know, in your last job, what safety thing did you pick up? I think that's great, and we need it. HR manager's going to kill me for saying this. You need it, let's face it, but I think you need to know the person. So that's just my take on it, and might be a bit naive, but it's worked for us really well.
Oh, not at all. It's, you know, as you were speaking, then I was making a link to the clear values of the organization and making sure there's that consistency. That's that. And when I was a manager at Accenture, they coached me on they trained me, sorry, on, I think it was called like situational interviewing. So it's kind of similar to what you're saying. Can you tell me about a time when this happened? And what they zoned in on was, you know, what was your response? How did you feel? What did you do? And the wisdom of that, those examples of these kind of interviewing flares, was that a lot of people, when they're interviewing, they'll go, oh, we achieved this, we did that. And it can come across as kind of that they did it, or they might actually, between the lines, they might be claiming credit for, you know, what their colleague or their boss achieved. It wasn't that they actually did it. So these types of things are brilliant, and I think that's a great answer, because it's basically interview flair. I'm really honing down to understanding how people think. So it's great.
I think there can be the other side of that too, and have someone that did everything. And I wonder somehow how everyone can do everything. You know, I did this and I did that, instead of, you know, I may have led this, but had a great team behind me. And that really shows, well, you know, are they a team player or not? You know, will they live and die for their team? You know, how does that work? So I think they're the sorts of things, you're right, that shine through, and you can see that. So yeah, and I think looking for those skill gaps within your team, and then being able to draw those out of the applicant or the candidate makes a big difference.
Correct. And I do think it requires leadership to look across the team to see that. You need a bit of both. You need your team to say, where's the gap? But sometimes the team has a blind spot to what that gap is. And you need good leaders to kind of go like, hey, the reason this is, you know, we're going around in circles here is because we need someone that understands the latest rostering system. Well, you know, you can identify the gap sometimes by looking down across the team.
True.
So let's ask a tech question. You know, you've grown a lot. What's the one piece of technology across the organization that you just could not live without now?
Teams.
Teams.
I know that sounds crazy. It sounds crazy, but let's face it, that's how we interview a lot of our staff that are in regional areas or rural areas. That's how we train a lot of our staff. That's how we have our meetings. That's how we can have a great EVP and some people working at home, or have flexi work days, office shares, all those sorts of things. It's crazy, but I have to say it's one of the things that we can't live without anymore. We simply can't. I don't know if the world could live without it, could they?
Well, no, they couldn't. No, exactly. It's become, I mean, look, I've worked from home for 12 years now, so I'm kind of used to it.
There you go.
You know, but you know, during COVID years and all that, that was just a natural extension of what I was already doing. But I'm happy to see a world now where it's just accepted that you can achieve anything with a remote, you know, thing.
Yeah, and look, it's certainly getting more and more towards that. We know the benefits of working in the office, and we know the benefits of working at home. And I think what works for one doesn't work for the other, but, you know, that's what it's all about. We're people, so it works great to have that flexibility. You know, I would probably say, you know, for the work that we do, you have to have an amazing client management system as well, Chris. You know, you can't do without that. You have to have a great rostering tool that puts those blockers on, so you cannot put the wrong staff member on with someone with diabetes if they don't have diabetes training. You know, you can't put someone on high complex care if they haven't had that training. So that's really important to us. And then cybersecurity, wow, you know, what we need now for that is really important. So I think they're probably some of the things that we can't live without in our industry. And I don't know if we can live without them in the world now.
No, I agree. I have an IT background before all of this, so like I have that inner geek in me. So forgive me for drilling down a bit, but I'm intrigued. What do you use for your rostering system?
Okay, we're just moved. That's true. 2 years we use Visual Care.
Visual Care.
Get it out there, Cheryl.
Yep, I know them. Yep.
But I guess what we're doing is we're building our own Visual Care. So when we engage with Visual Care, we said we will employ a developer within Visual Care, and they're developing Visual Care for us. So we have put all the extra stuff like blockers. We have changed Visual Care to work for us. They've been a great organisation or business to work for, but it's taken us 2 years and we're not finished our journey yet. So we have built lots of different functions into Visual Care to work for us, and that's been great.
That is interesting, yeah, because I know them. You know, so some of those things, like, for example, you know, stop this person going on a shift if you've not got diabetes training. Is that an example of a custom development, or is that something out of the box? Custom, yeah, exactly. It's interesting, yeah, because there's no perfect system, but gosh, technology can achieve so much. Like, you know, it's amazing what you can do, even on the billing side, right? You know, I know there's a great company that I collaborate with called PayCat, and they're bloody fantastic at interpreting the SHADS award, right? So they'll take the rostering extract, and then they'll automatically calculate all these nuances of the allowances that you're meant to have. Like, you know, were you up for 1 hour or half an hour in the middle of the night? What does that mean? Meal allowance, broken shift allowance. And a lot of the systems can't comprehensively do all of that SHADS stuff. Yeah, exactly.
Award interpreter is just absolutely essential in our game, that's for sure. We also have a software developer on staff as well, and he's developed other software for us to use. So we use our own software that we've developed in our finance areas as well, and to work in our contracts team. And that's been absolutely fantastic, and it's saved us, you know, many of staff actually, which is fantastic.
Yeah, great answer. I love that. And for the client management system, again, forgive me asking, but like, what do you use? I'm intrigued.
Well, we're using Visual Care for that
Visual Care for that.
But once again, we're still building that as well. So we've built all of our own goal setters and all of our own incidents reports. So that's all been developed just for ourselves as well. And, you know, I know a lot of people get benefits from a lot of it as well, but we've actually been on a journey to develop it to suit us.
Oh, you're talking custom developers. You're speaking my language now.
There you go.
So, again, one more question, if I may. I was the director of a SIL provider down in Wollongong, and I kind of noticed that the systems that were being used there were a bit too kind of staticky. So if you had, say, a care plan or whatever, it's basically like a PDF upload, and it's static, and you can't update it. And so one of the things I advocated for and implemented was the use of Microsoft SharePoint. And so the idea there was to have like a SharePoint for participants. And then what that meant is that the staff could have the Microsoft apps on their phone. If they need to take a picture, it went up into the SharePoint. If they wanted to edit a stool chart, a PRN register, or whatever, it could actually be done on a Word document via the cloud. Do you guys do anything like that to kind of stay away from paper?
Look, we do. We're cloud-based, and we try very hard to be a paperless organisation. I just put an email out last week saying, do we really need to be printing all of this stuff? But look, that is definitely the way we are going. More and more, we're fairly well paperless. But look, there's some amazing stuff out there. We really have to be careful with our privacy laws now, though.
Very true.
And we, you know, taking photos is great. And I think to be able to have that technology right there and for all of our health practitioners, you know, to be able to support them with photos is great. So we're working through a lot of those privacy issues at the moment, making sure they're removed off phones straight away, making sure that we use our staff phones and not our personal phones. And, you know, that's a really big body of work to do. But look, I've not been a IT freak or guru or whatever you want to call them, Chris, but the more you get into it, it's just amazing world out there, isn't it? Just amazing
it is.
What you can do.
Let me share an inspiration story for everyone's benefit. I did a project with a wonderful provider, and what we did is a text message campaign out to their 1,000 participants that they had in their database. And it was basically like a, hey, g'day, you know, it's the CEO here. I want to ask a favor. Can you do as a Google review at this link? And overnight, in 24 hours, we doubled their Google reviews, like overnight, because it was sending that request via a text. And so the point I'm making is that technology, like integrating an SMS campaign software to your CRM, that kind of stuff can transform, because most of the time people, when they see an email for a Google review request, they go, oh yeah, maybe I'll do that later, and they forget. Whereas getting it on your phone, it transformed it. And so it's very powerful.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, and it is fantastic. We use that to keep our candidates, when let's say if they're waiting for their blue card or something, we'll text them all the time to just say, keeping you in the loop, still waiting or whatever. So we certainly use it for that. We use it a lot with our rostering system as well, of course. So we send out texts because people can get them straight away, regardless they are, if they want to change your shift. And we do find that to just be invaluable. There's no doubt. Our staff clock in and clock off on their app as well.
And that's the visual care thing, isn't it? I love that feature. And if I remember correctly, it's geo-tagged, so you can actually see that the staff member was actually at that house, which is amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Isn't it amazing? Yeah, so that's great. And to be able to do everything on their app is just, on their phone is fantastic, because we've always got our phones with us.
Yes.
That's how life is. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, I'll get off my geek train now, and I'll ask you one more question.
Right. Okay.
We've got the Royal Commission coming up in October, hopefully still. What kinds of outcomes are you hoping for from the Commission?
Look, I would be surprised if they're any different than anyone else's, Chris. We want change for people with a disability. That's what we want. I want people to feel safe in their homes. Some of the stories are gut-wrenching, they really are. And to think that people can't feel safe in their own homes is just, it's hard to fathom, that's for sure. So, we want clarity of issues, we want recommendations for improvements. I suppose we want people to be held accountable, for some of the things that have happened, but we need to move forward and we need to enhance our safeguarding. I think improve our quality of services is obviously everything. And I'm being broad now because I know that we don't have all day, because we certainly could. But, those inclusive policies, I think that's really important. Make sure that everyone has accessibility in everything that they do, so they can go to the football, they can go to the corner store. And I think that will change lives in itself. Obviously we want long-term sustainability in all of our changes. When it comes to fraud and all that the Commission is looking at, we do, and you've probably seen it on our signatures, we do a lot of campaigns around that. Not on my watch is the one that we've got at the moment, and that means calling out fraud, calling out bad practice, calling out anything that you would see, whether it's financial abuse, whether it's our support workers abusing our staff, abusing each other for that matter. All of those sorts of things are important to us, and I think we want to know what the issues are, and we want to know what's going to happen about them. But I do think some of those inclusive policies, making sure that we have strengthened our collaboration, between government and advocates and stakeholders, enhance, all of that cooperation. And I think the NDIS has done a lot of that, to be fair. I know that sometimes the NDIA or the NDIS gets a bad review, but holy, it's changed people's lives across Australia. Absolutely. Everywhere, Chris. It's made it a better world. It's brought disability to the spotlight, as has the Commission. But I think the NDIS has done that in itself, and it's really matured. And come once again, September, October, we're going to see what maturity it does bring the NDIS. And I think that the Royal Commission is going to stand right beside that.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Look, I agree wholeheartedly with everything you said. And I think really the main things that need to be, that matter the most are removing abuse and fraud and standing up for people's, rights, primarily. The one niche question I want to ask you is, do you think that the market needs to go in a direction toward registration increasingally? Because there's also, it's nothing against unregistered providers, but when you've got essentially two frameworks of management, then should we say, the consequences aren't really there, right? So again, I've seen this in real life between a registered provider. They make a complaint about the unregistered provider because something dodgy happened, but then the unregistered provider is only bound by the code of ethics, but not by practice standards. And so you're like, what? So where's the actual recourse, right?
Absolutely. And they don't go through the scrutiny of, if you just look at audits alone, and we've just finished our audit, and honestly, the scrutiny that you go through and ensuring that everything is right, is intense, and we need to make sure that everyone is under the same scrutiny in everything that we do. Like you say, you should all be working towards the standards. And I would wonder whether some organisations even know the standards, or the workers know the standards they're working under. And I think that if we're all registered, it would bring that. And not suggesting that all unregistered providers aren't great providers, because we know they are. We absolutely know they are, but I think we all need to be singing off the same hymn sheet.
Yes.
And I think we all need to be bound by the same codes.
Yes.
And I think it will make a difference to the scheme and to people's lives, because we also know there's been an awful lot of fraud that probably could have picked up earlier had there been registered providers.
Well, exactly. So there's so many macro trends, right? You know, when I asked Joanne Hewitt from Achieve Australia that question, you know, we had similar kind of philosophy of response, but it was also acknowledging it's not a simple answer, because of course you've got the choice and control side of things, where you're right to say, I want to go with this person, I don't care if they're registered or not. So that is very true. But regardless, the singing from the same hymn sheet in any form of regulation is crucial for an industry.
It is crucial.
To work.
Well, it holds people to account, and you know, we're using the public's money. And should we not be held to account? Absolutely, we should, in every single thing we do, from our practice to our finances, to everything that we do. And I think that's something that we hold very strongly at our core, and believe that everyone should. You know, we're working with some of Australia's most disadvantaged, really, and they should be, you know, that they should be treated with dignity. And I think that's could go a long way towards it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we must remember that this is a world-class scheme, and whilst we've got a ways to go, we're doing incredible, right? So we just need to carry on going in the right direction, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a wonderful scheme, and it's changed so many people's lives, and so many people's younger lives as well, that would never have been on the scheme had it not been for the scheme.
I agree, because I know that my son's a participant, and thank God for early intervention with his autism. Like, it's been transformational. It's helped, you know, massively. So, you know, I think it's a wonderful thing. Yeah, brilliant. Well, listen, Cheryl, look, we could probably go on all day. I know this is how it's like, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's so much to talk about.
There really is. There really is. Look, it's been a pleasure to pick your brains on how you've grown the organization. It's really, you know, refreshing and you know, grounding to know that you can just stick to what's right and stick to what's good with people and culture and process, and you know, that's when good things come to you, right? So it's all about what you put out there and what you put into your business.
It is. And you know, Chris, we have wonderful people. You know, we have the best staff, or the best employees, or the best people. We really do. And it takes them to be able to do what we've done. And so, you know, I'm just grateful to be able to walk alongside and learn from some of our amazing people. So yeah, we're a great organisation, I believe, and it's because of our people. And we have some great clients that come with us, that have been with us from, you know, day one. And I guess that's where you see the rewards, isn't it? When you know that you've still got employees and you've still got clients that are with you from day one. That's when you know you're doing something right.
Exactly. Brilliant. Listen, Cheryl Barrett from Southern Cross Support Services, thank you for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure. My name's Chris Hall. This is Peak Provider. If you're interested in scaling your business, go to peakprovider.com.au. And Cheryl, all the best to you and your team. It's great to see all the work that you're doing.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure, Chris.